Stoic warriors, welcome back. There are people who laugh, work and move through each day as though everything is under control. They show up, they perform, they keep moving forward. But beneath the surface their mind never truly slows down. Every quiet moment becomes another chance to revisit an old mistake. Every silence becomes an opportunity for worry to fill the space. Every conversation replayed, every decision second-guessed, every fear rehearsed until it feels more real than the present moment they are standing in. Little by little, that constant tension begins to feel familiar, and inner peace, real peace, becomes something they remember rather than something they experience. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because the hardest part is that life rarely overwhelms us all at once. It does so one thought, one disappointment, and one emotional reaction at a time until the weight feels impossible to put down. The Stoics understood a truth that remains just as powerful today as it was 2,000 years ago. Lasting peace is never found by waiting for life to become easier. It is built by strengthening the mind until the world no longer decides what happens within it. Circumstances will always change. People will always have opinions. Unexpected challenges will always appear. But none of them have the authority to rule your inner world unless you quietly hand that authority over. Welcome to Stoic Cipher. This channel exists for one reason, not to motivate you for a moment, but to give you the kind of wisdom that changes how you think, how you carry yourself, and how you make decisions permanently. We go deep into the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, not to quote them, but to live them. Ancient philosophy built for modern battles. Subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. A single moment is often all it takes to change the direction of an entire day. Someone answers with an impatient tone. A message arrives that you were not expecting. A plan you had been looking forward to suddenly falls apart. None of these moments lasts very long. They appear, they happen, and they pass. Yet something unusual begins happening afterward. The event disappears, but your mind refuses to let it leave. Hours later, while everything around you has already moved on, part of you is still standing inside that same conversation, replaying every word, imagining all the things you should have said differently. The day itself was never destroyed by the event. It was transformed by the attention you kept giving it long after reality had already moved on. Marcus Aurelius expressed this with remarkable clarity. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Stoicism teaches that there is a difference between experiencing something and becoming possessed by it. The first is unavoidable. The second is a habit we strengthen without noticing. Every time we revisit an insult, rehearse an argument, or create imaginary versions of what could have happened, we extend the life of an experience that has already ended. The event remains untouched while the person carrying it grows heavier. Modern psychology reaches a remarkably similar conclusion. The human brain is wired to notice problems more than peaceful moments because throughout history survival depended on detecting threats quickly. That instinct once protected our ancestors. But today it often traps us inside emotional loops that serve no real purpose. A brief disagreement receives more mental energy than 10 meaningful conversations. One careless comment overshadows an entire day filled with quiet successes. Without realizing it, people begin training themselves to expect tension. Peace starts feeling unfamiliar because the mind has spent so much time rehearsing conflict that calmness almost seems suspicious. Drop this in the comments. I choose peace over replaying the past. Once you see how the mind keeps reopening closed doors, something else becomes clear. Many people assume that emotional discipline requires suppressing feelings. Stoicism teaches something far more balanced and far more powerful. The goal is not to become indifferent or emotionally empty. The goal is to prevent emotions from becoming rulers instead of advisors. Epictetus, born a slave who had every reason to be consumed by bitterness, taught this with absolute clarity. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Every feeling contains information, but not every feeling deserves authority. Anger may reveal that something matters to you, yet it should not determine your response. Fear may encourage caution, but it should not convince you to abandon your values. Disappointment may remind you that expectations were unmet, but it does not have to define the rest of your day. Think about waves crashing against a shoreline. Some are gentle, others arrive with tremendous force, convincing you they will reshape everything, yet none of them remains forever. Every wave eventually retreats back into the sea. Emotions behave in exactly the same way. They arrive with intensity. They convince you they will last indefinitely, but they rarely do unless the mind keeps calling them back. Replaying the situation, repeating the story, feeding the feeling with endless attention gives temporary emotions a longer life than they were ever meant to have. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When feelings remain visitors instead of permanent residents, they lose much of their power to disturb your inner peace. The mind becomes stronger not by eliminating emotion, but by learning where emotion belongs. Comment: my feelings are visitors, not my identity. And once you begin treating emotions as visitors rather than residents, something remarkable happens. Situations that once consumed your attention start passing through your mind much more quickly. An impatient stranger no longer follows you home. A difficult conversation ends when the conversation ends, instead of continuing all evening inside your thoughts. Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who survived the worst conditions imaginable, wrote something that echoes Stoic wisdom with remarkable precision. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space is where inner peace lives. That space is where emotional control is practiced. That space is where mental strength is built, not in the absence of difficulty, but in the deliberate choice of how to respond to it. The Stoic practice for creating that space is deceptively simple. Before responding, pause. Before reacting, breathe. Not because you are suppressing your emotions, but because you are giving your rational mind the few seconds it needs to catch up with your emotional reaction. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every single morning. He would remind himself that the day ahead would bring difficult people, unexpected setbacks and moments of frustration, and he chose in advance how he would respond to each of them, not denial, preparation. That is the difference between emotional reactivity and genuine inner peace. At the end of today, will you be able to say where your attention went and why, or will you only be able to say what happened to you? One of those is ownership. The other is trespassing on your own life. Drop this below. I choose my response. That space between stimulus and response leads to something even deeper. The Stoics believed that every person possesses something no circumstance can truly steal: the ability to choose their own judgments, intentions, and actions. Everything beyond that exists outside complete control. You cannot decide what another person believes about you. You cannot guarantee success despite careful preparation. You cannot prevent every disappointment, delay, or unexpected change. Yet you always retain the ability to decide how you interpret those moments and what kind of person you will become because of them. That realization shifts the center of your life. Instead of measuring yourself by outcomes that constantly change, you begin measuring yourself by qualities that remain entirely your own. Wisdom, courage, patience, integrity. Modern psychology describes this through the concept of an internal locus of control. People who build their lives around internal values rather than external circumstances tend to experience greater emotional resilience during difficulty. Their mental strength depends less on unpredictable events and more on principles they have chosen deliberately. Their confidence grows from character rather than constant validation. They stop waiting for life to provide permission before feeling at peace. Instead, they discover that peace develops through repeated decisions made under ordinary conditions. Every thoughtful response strengthens that foundation. Every time you choose patience over frustration, honesty over convenience, or awareness over automatic reaction, you are building something that no changing circumstance can easily disturb. Comment, my peace rests on character, not circumstance. And once character becomes your foundation, peace stops being something you search for. Not freedom from hardship, because no philosophy can promise that. Not freedom from emotion, because feeling deeply is part of being human. The world continues changing exactly as it always has. People will misunderstand you, plans will fail, unexpected challenges will interrupt even your best intentions. But none of those things have the final say over your inner life unless you give them that power. Seneca reminded us, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Lasting inner peace was never hiding somewhere in the future. Many people unknowingly postpone it, believing they will finally feel calm after achieving success, solving every problem, or reaching complete security. Yet each achievement is usually followed by another expectation, another goal, another source of uncertainty. Peace continues moving further away because it has been attached to circumstances that constantly change. The Stoics understood that inner stability cannot be postponed until life becomes perfect, because perfection has never been part of the human experience. The opportunity to cultivate peace has always existed in the present moment, hidden inside ordinary choices that rarely seem significant while they are happening. Every time you chose reflection instead of reaction, you strengthened your character. Every time you released resentment instead of feeding it, your mind became lighter. Every time you accepted uncertainty without surrendering to fear, your confidence deepened. None of those moments attracted attention. Most seemed almost insignificant at the time, yet together they shaped a way of living that no changing circumstance could easily disturb. The world will continue to change. People will continue to disappoint you. Unexpected challenges will continue to appear, but none of those things have the final say over your inner life. What ultimately defines your experience is not the condition of the road beneath your feet. It is the character you continue building with every step forward. Real peace is not found when the world finally becomes quiet. It begins when the noise outside no longer controls the life inside your mind. That is the quiet promise of Stoicism, and it has been available to you all along. Drop this final comment: I build my peace one decision at a time. If this video gave you something today, share it with one person who needs to hear it right now. Subscribe to Stoic Cipher for more ancient philosophy built for modern battles. New video every week.